All right, and welcome everybody to the IU Hoops halftime report. As look, rough start for Indiana and Iowa City as Iowa made their first 10, 11 shots. The Hoosiers dug themselves a pretty steep early deficit there when Iowa went up 23-10, and it looked like we might give back all of our gains in adjusted defensive efficiency and all those numbers that we've been talking about all week. It looked like they were all going to reverse back in the course of about 20 minutes. But to Indiana's credit, they battled back. And look, Ryan talks a lot on the post game show, as I'm sure you've probably heard, about these early starts, and they can kind of be quirky. The way you come out, and kind of messes with your body clock a little bit. And Indiana came out a little bit sluggish. Now, maybe it's not necessarily the early start. Indiana's come out sluggish in other Big Ten road games that have been at night too. But what was different about this one is Indiana really battled back. And sure, you can attribute that to, playing Iowa is a little bit different than playing Ohio State, playing Michigan State, which were other games where Indiana got buried early on the road and then never really came back. But in this one, Indiana did. And I thought, several reasons for it. Number one, I just think Indiana started battling more on the defensive end. And there was one possession in particular. I think it was right out of the under 12-minute timeout. Indiana, it was 25-15. And really at that point, Iowa had basically gotten every shot that they had wanted. And yeah, part of a team going 10 for 10, 11 for 11 is just, ridiculously hot shooting that can't sustain itself no matter if you're leaving people wide open. But when you're giving people the shot they want, they're much more likely to make them, obviously. And while Tyler Cook certainly kept going and Indiana's defense wasn't great by any means, they started to play much tougher and make Iowa work a little bit more. And so that kind of got the game back into a pace for Indiana that they needed it to be. And when Indiana starts getting some stops, this Iowa team is awful defensively. I mean, they are in the 200s defensively. So if you can just string together some stops, you're going to be able to score on the other end. And Indiana was able to do that. And perhaps most impressive is that comeback in the first half came with Juwan Morgan on the bench for a lot of it, because Juwan picked up a second foul with 5-6 minutes left, something like that. He was out. He was out for a while. And what Indiana did was just kind of slowly chip away. Iowa won the first sequence 17-10, the second sequence 8-5, tracking the sequences between TV timeouts. And so it's 25-15. And then Indiana wins the next three, 8-7, 7-5, 12-8. And that's the thing. You don't have to go on like a 15-0 run and get it all back at once. You just got to dig in and be mentally tough enough to chip away and just stick with it. And I think that, to me, is the biggest difference between this program now and where the program was at before. Before it was all, we've got to get a 12, 15-point run, led all by three-pointers, and that'll get us back into it because we don't have the fortitude on the defensive end to do it. And I think the difference now is Indiana does. And so you hold Iowa to 7 points, 5 points, 8 points. And even though Tyler Cook goes off, you don't really let anybody else. And now when Robert Johnson starts making a few threes and Justin Smith gets into a little run, where he's getting some putback dunks and making some nice cuts from the short corner, now those buckets mean something because you're getting stops on the other end. So there was a lot to dislike from that half, especially with how it began. But again, as we look for growth in the program, I like what Indiana did over those final 12 minutes. And here's the interesting thing. Just from a visceral level, I never thought we were out of it, even with the way that the game started. Like, I just kind of thought, all right, you know what? We're going to settle in here. The defense will pick itself up. We'll be okay. We'll make some shots on the other end because of how, poor Iowa is defensively. We'll be all right. And it was really nice to see the team kind of live up to those expectations, because I don't know that the team last year would have, and I don't know that this team a month ago or 6 weeks ago necessarily would have been able to do that on the road. So look, it's only 20 minutes. We've got to go play another 20 minutes. Iowa could come out and make the first 4 or 5 shots of the second half if we're not careful, because they're a good offensive team. And so, we're going to have to figure out how to deal with Tyler Cook. And obviously having Juwan and Freddie McSwain and Zach McRoberts with 2 fouls isn't great. So those guys are going to have to stay out of foul trouble. But Indiana's just got to be gritty on defense. And the guards have to continue doing a good job, as they did over the final 8 minutes, of making things a little bit tougher on those entry passes inside. And Indiana's just going to have to play the positioning game, because Iowa is taller. They're the 8th tallest team in the country. They've got a guy in Cook that I don't think we really have anybody who can guard him one-on-one. And you don't want Juwan trying, because he's going to pick up fouls. And so you're going to have to play some team defense on Cook. And basically keep playing defense like you did there over the final 12 minutes, and then just keep being patient. Because if you're patient offensively, you will get good shots against Iowa, and you will be able to score. So I feel good about where Indiana is. No matter what, when you're only down 3 on the road in Big Ten play, now you enter the final 12 minutes, with a chance, to play well and get a win. You're not trying to dig yourself out of a 10, 11-point hole. So I think you feel good about that no matter what. But I think for Indiana, you can especially feel good about it because of how the game started and because of kind of how you ended the half and some of the momentum that you had there at the end of the half. So kudos to Robert Johnson for shaking off that air ball and coming back and knocking it down a few threes after that. Kudos to Justin Smith for shaking off, being dunked on and coming back and scoring 6 points after that. So I think what you're seeing is a team that really has some impressive mental toughness, and that in that sense, really kind of taking on the personality of their coach and continuing to fight. And even though the numbers don't look good and some of what's happened in the first half hasn't been good, I'm impressed with the way that these guys fought back. And so, Juwan Morgan right now, he played 15 minutes, only had 4 points, in part because Iowa's length really took away what he likes to do inside. And so he's going to have to, really focus on using his quickness to beat Iowa, not try and shoot over them. And I think Dan Dockich even mentioned that, and he's absolutely right, because he's obviously going to have a bigger second half for Indiana to win. I think you look at what, Justin, Devontae, Robert, all in double figures, really carrying Indiana from a scoring perspective. Now Juwan's got to get back out there. His teammates brought Indiana back with him on the bench, and now it's time for him to lead and kind of be that catalyst on offense that he wasn't really able to be in the first half. So really interesting first half. I think a lot to like from an Indiana perspective in terms of how they came back. And now for Indiana, the keys are, to me, the first 5 minutes of the second half are important. Remind Iowa that this is going to be a grind. I think this Iowa team is a lot like previous Indiana teams where they get going. It's kind of a pretty free-flowing game. They're pretty good. If you stop that and make it a tough, grinded out game, I think you're going to see them wilt. And that's what Indiana wants. So Indiana just has to bring that kind of mentality and presence and pressure to the game. And if they do, I think Indiana's going to win. And I think setting the tone for that over the first 4 or 5 minutes of the second half, especially when you've got all your guys out there, I think is going to be really important for Indiana. And if they can do that, if they can continue to win the turnover battle, and right now they're at +5 in the turnover battle, and then, I think you do those things, and I think Indiana's going to win this game. And then obviously, knock down some free throws if it gets to that toward the end. So far, Indiana's only shot 2, but hopefully, you get down there to the end, you get ahead, force Iowa to foul you, and then you start making those. But we got a long way to go to get to that point. The most important thing is come out these first 5 minutes, establish the tough defensive mentality that you had over the final 12 minutes of the first half. And I think if Indiana can make it that kind of game, it'll be the kind of game that Indiana wants and the kind of game that Indiana can win. And look, anytime you shoot 6 for 12 from downtown, 50%, that doesn't hurt either. So Indiana's going to keep getting the good looks. Those good looks need to keep dropping as well. All right. Thank you all for joining me here on the Halftime Report. Andy is out for the post-game show, but Ryan will be with me. So come to the homepage, assemblycall.com, or check us out right on YouTube, and we will talk about hopefully another IU victory on the post-game show. Talk to y'all then.